Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we are going to have a look at the Gold Coast Suns, take a look at all their options that they've got for us in the SuperCoach world for 2017. Now, if you haven't caught any of these previews so far, it's where I take a bit of a broader view at some of the options for each club. Not necessarily your obvious targets or draftees, they'll come. We'll talk about your Ainsworth, your Brodies, your Bows, your Scrimshaws, all in good time, and particularly when they start playing some pre-season matches. But at this point in time, late December, I think it's worth just casting an eye over a couple of options that perhaps offer a fair bit of debate and will differ on people's opinion, and certain players will create more debate than others, but I try to pick out a few that certainly cause the most debate. So we'll start with David Swallow. Now, he is very, very cheap for a number one draft pick, a bloke who has averaged 100 before and we know is capable of being elite. He's priced at 280k. He is just a midfielder. Of course, his career best season and a breakout year in 2014 saw him average 103. And he was a defender, so he's lost that tag since, and fair enough, he's a pure midfielder. But the concern is no doubt his body. Now, he's been riddled with knee injuries, struggled for some time. There was rumour that he was going to join his brother over at North Melbourne, but he's since signed a long-term deal with the Gold Coast Suns, which is great for the stability of the club because they've lost so many. But the big question mark surrounding Swallow is no doubt, can he just stay on the park? It's a big question mark, it's a big if, because over the last couple of seasons he has certainly failed to do so. Last year, he didn't play last year, and in 2015 just played the 6 games and averaged 85.8. Now, I'm all for taking a risk on a bloke who's had an injury 1 year. He's played a couple of games, he's discounted and priced nicely, but when you start seeping into the couple of years where injury has really cursed you, that's when we start to really get extremely risky in our selections, and I think that's where Swallow starts to concern me. I myself won't be starting him unless he would have light the pre-season on fire. Another reason being, he's a pure midfielder, and I honestly don't see too much of a space for mid-prices in the midfield. I just don't think it's a place we should be picking too many, and I think the main guy that most people are looking at is O'Meara. I'll discuss him when we get to the Hawks, and he's by no means a no-brainer for myself. But Swallow at 280k, I love the price. I believe he can probably average around 85-90, but I just don't think he's going to play all the games. There's such risk around him. If he was a defender, like he has been in the past, you'd lock him in, you'd take that sort of a risk. But for a midfield option, I personally like to bulk up my midfield with largely premiums and your best rookies, and maybe if there's someone banging down the door at 200, then I'll pick him, and that's probably what Swallow's going to have to do. He's going to have to bang the door down big time through pre-season. At the moment, he is travelling well in training, looking alright, but he's going to have to do a lot more than that than just get through. I think he's really going to have to step up and show that he's A, playing right through the midfield, and B, looking as fit as ever, because we just can't afford to pick a bloke at 280,000 in our valuable midfield where there's a plethora of guys averaging 3 figures, and then he goes down after 3 or 4 weeks, or he gets rested after 3 just to guide him through his return from the knee injury. So be careful. 24 months, he's played 6 games. That concerns me, but let me know your thoughts on him. Another man that is unbelievably going under the radar, and understandably so, but normally each and every year he is at the top of the conversation, and that is one Gary Ablett Jr. Now, he's priced at 620. For a guy that has seemingly been having poor seasons, he's still priced, I think it's number 5 out of the whole competition, averaged 114.1, which, mind you, is his lowest average since 2006, where he averaged 94.1. Since then, it's all been 114 plus averages. I don't have to tell you that he's a gun. He's arguably the best player to ever grace the field. But the question mark around him, we all know, it's the injuries, and in particular, that shoulder that has really caused him a lot of trouble and seems to go at the drop of a hat. He cops a bit of pressure on it, cops a bump. It's very, very susceptible to going out and just copping a niggle, and we know that Ablett likes to be 100% out in the field, and that really concerns me. Never did I think the day would come round when I uttered the phrase point of difference next to Gary Ablett's name, but at this stage I think he could offer you that. That is the upside with Gary Ablett. He's an absolute superstar. You don't have to worry about him playing forward or scoring or anything like that. He may play forward a little bit more, but he's going to kick goals. He's an absolutely brilliant one-on-one player. I wouldn't be too worried about that. The only concern is about the shoulder, and to be honest, I'm really not going to give it a second thought with Ablett. He won't be in my team. I just think it's far too risky. Let me have a look at the old notepad here. How many games has he played of late? Last 3 years, 14 games, 6 games, and 15. Every time he plays, he scores. He's a gun, but the fact is, I just couldn't see him playing a full season, and that shoulder is a massive concern, and I just think that it's far too risky to play him. As I said with Swallow, it's one thing to have 1 year affected with injury, it's another to have 2, in Ablett's case, 3. He was once extremely durable. Unfortunately, the shoulder seems to have got the better of him. I don't doubt his ability to play great footy. I don't doubt his ability to play in the midfield for high minutes. Every time the pre-season rolls around, people are talking about how he's going to play in the forward line for 80%. He's a jet. That won't happen. The Suns have lost a lot of players. We'll have a lot of youth in the midfield. They need him there. The concern is simply fitness, and as far as I'm concerned, he's proven that he's a scorer, but he's also proven of late that he can't be trusted with his body, and he's only getting older. So for me, unfortunately, Gary, you will not be selected in Shorty's Superstars. And we'll move on to another couple of young guns and promising players at the Suns. I'll start with Touk Miller. Both these blokes possess dual position status, which puts them on the radar of discussion. Now Miller is priced at $429,000. You can get him as a mid-forward option, averaged 78.8 last year. Now there's a lot of hype about him, and understandably so, particularly in the back half of last year. Last 6 games he averaged 100.5 and was very impressive. But that was in a decimated Gold Coast Suns midfield. As you can tell from the last couple of players I've put up for discussion, they've all been injured. And of course O'Meara, likewise. Prestia was suffering injury as well. So it's been a very, very injury-prone midfield. And that led to Miller getting opportunity. And he took it with both hands. He played extremely good footy. He's a well-built young man. He's physically, I feel, ready to get a strong rotation in the midfield of an AFL side. But I just can't pick him. I mean, it's just far too risky for mine. He's played about 40 odd games. He's still very young. He's still very raw. He may be a guy we look at down the track, no doubt. But for me, it's just far too risky. Simply because of that awkward price. I would definitely look at him at SuperCoach draft for a late pick. But as far as picking for our classic sides, what's he going to give you? I mean, he's not going to make you money. You're not picking him for that. You're picking him for the obvious reason that you feel he can average 90 plus and closer to 100, mind you. I know we've lost a few mid-forward options. One of them's his teammate, Aaron Hall, and we've lost your Merritts, your Martins, your Zorkos. The list goes on. But I don't think we need to be jumping at guys like this. I think there's far better options. Look out for your Heaney's, your McRae's, your Dalhouse. Bear with me, I've got a cold. Your Benells, see how he's tracking along. I wouldn't have thought Miller is right at the pointy end of guys we should be looking for. I know we like to lick our lips when we see the old M/F, mind you, right next to their names. That gets us thinking. But for mine, I just can't be selecting him because I don't see him bursting the ceiling as far as scoring wise. I expect to see a steady improvement, no doubt, maybe high 80s, maybe low 90s, but I still wouldn't be picking him for that. I think there's too much to put on the line and there's better options out there. I'll move along to another talented youngster at the Suns, and that's Jack Martin. He also possesses dual position. This time it's a mid-defender status, which is very interesting and adds another curveball to the situation because historically defenders don't score as well. So if you can get a promising young fella like we did with Swallow in 2014 that has defender status, then we can jump at it. Am I going to jump at Jack Martin? Following the trend of my thoughts on Gold Coast Suns players so far, no, I'm not. I don't think, like Miller, my reasonings are fairly much the same with these two guys. I think they're reasonably priced, but I don't see them exploding into three-figure numbers, nor 95 plus. Martin's an extremely talented player, there's no doubt about that, and he added consistency to his game last year, got a bit more familiar with the AFL system, and no doubt both those guys will be talking about down the track as potential options, but I don't think in 2017 they'll be guys that we seriously look at. I mean, as for Martin, he's priced at $404,000 after averaging 74.3. I know he's a very talented player, but it's just an awkward price. It's the reason we and ah about our mid-price guys, because you got to put your balls on the line. To say it absolutely plain and simple, as Jock Reynolds would say, you need extremely big testicles to pick these men. I mean, when you're priced at this awkward range of $250,000 to $400,000, you're taking the gamble that this guy is on the step to a breakout season. Now, they're hard to pick, and the thing is, it's easy to pick a rookie. You pick a basement guy, he's going to make you money. If he plays, he'll make you money. It's just a question of how much. If we pick a guy who's over $550,000, you got to go desperately wrong to not get 105 plus average. You really got to be kidding yourself if you can't pick the best of the best. Now, it takes guts to pick a mid-pricer, and it's very hard to tick the box of yes, that was a success, because they have to go from a mid-price guy to a keeper. You don't want to pay $400,000 to eventually trade a bloke. You want him to be there the whole season, and you've got him at a nice price before anyone else could. Do I see this happening with the past two guys? No. Talented young players. 2017 could be good years for them, but I don't think it'll be absolutely huge numbers as far as SuperCoach keepers go. I'll finally round out the Suns with another talented young man. They are blessed with quite a few, and probably tarred with that brush of potential and talented youngsters. They really need a producer, but that's probably another story for another podcast. But Cade Kolodjasny certainly showed his ability 2 years ago when he averaged 89.4. Now, no doubt he's a fantastic running defender, nice use of the ball, has the ability to intercept as well. Ticked all the boxes. Now, what happened last year? I think a lot of us, myself included, were seriously looking at him for a round one spot until I think from memory he was a late withdrawal with illness. Certainly either was a late withdrawal or he wasn't named in the side, and a lot of people cut him, a lot of people did hold him, and of course he burnt most because he only averaged 69 for the year. Now, what happened? Why was that? There were no real injuries. He got concussed throughout the year. He suffered with illness and a strange abdomen injury from all reports, and apparently it's got a lot to do with his diet. I was reading an article the other day about them changing his diet and some form of bacteria that was making him ill in his stomach. I'm no doctor, so I'm not going to try and tell you exactly what he had, but whatever it was weird and it was different, and it kept him out and it kept him away from his best form. Now, it now puts him at a fairly nice price. To be exact, $375,000. Now, he's a jet on the rise, that's for sure. We can pick him as a defender, as I said. Running defenders, and particularly guys who are well priced and have shown the ability to be extremely good players, should always be considered. But I'd love to pick him, but I just don't think I could. Sorry, if there's any Suns fans out here, I've probably crushed you because I've got 5 blokes here and I've said no to all of them, but sometimes you just cop that. I'm a massive fan of Kolodjasny, no doubt about that. You know, Malcheski's retired, McKenzie's out of form, I don't know what's going on with him. There's a spot for him. I reckon he could average around 90. But there's no guarantees with him. And I must say, at least on the early look towards our defence, there seems to be quite a lot of options. Your Lairds, your Adams, your Hartlets, you know, your Rance, your Shaw, your Doherty, the list goes on. We're not lost for a lot of stars down there, which in the past we have been. Even last year we were a bit short on genuine premiums, I suppose. So I wouldn't have thought taking a risk on a bloke like Kolodjasny would be exactly what we need to be doing, but he's worth considering. I mean, he's shown the ability to rack up big numbers. He finds the ball nicely. Another pre-season under his belt. Apparently he's as fit as ever, as everyone is in the pre-season, mind you, but I personally couldn't see myself picking him, mainly because, as I just mentioned, a few guys, a lot of those are already in my backline. I think there's a lot of really nice players in the backline this year, well priced, players that I think are undervalued as well, or underpriced, and offer a fair bit of value. So I don't feel like we need to take a risk on a guy like Kolodjasny. I certainly think he will be a big player in Supercoach sides down the track. But as the case with quite a few of these fellas that I've mentioned, I don't think next year will be that year. So that's a bit of a wrap up for the Suns. A few mid-price options in there, in amongst the legend of Gary Ablett. And it's not so much that I don't rate those players, but the fact of their price. It's very difficult to try and pinpoint the right mid prices, because it takes a lot of guts and an element of luck as well. You know, you can identify a good player and you just miss his breakout year by a season. So I think it's extremely risky. All the players I've mentioned, as I've said, I think are going to be fantastic players and have all the makings, which is exactly why they've got people talking and why I'm talking about them right now. But I'm not sure that they have the ability to pump their average up by over 20 points, which is pretty much what they have to do to warrant selection. So be careful to not get sucked in to too many mid prices, because I think there will be good ones. There certainly looks like there will be, but I just don't think many of them will be wearing Gold Coast Sun colours in 2017. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm enjoying doing these previews in the podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying listening to them. Getting a few more subscribers on board, which is great to see. Enjoying getting a few comments on board as well. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Give me your thoughts. You know, if you've been watching for a few weeks and you haven't commented, what are you doing, mate? You know, I want to hear from you. Give me your thoughts on the podcast. If I've missed someone, if you disagree with me, let me know. I'll always get around to replying, whether it's in a day or a week. I always look to check them and suss the emails from time to time. So thanks for tuning in, guys. That's enough for me talking. I'll leave you guys to it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.